Hello everybody, I'm Fatou Takibi. I'm the co-chair of the Junior Members Working Group of the IAU, along with my colleague Maria Tozdovskaya. So thank you for joining us today for our very first webinar since the establishment of the IAU Junior Members at the last IAU General Assembly in August 2018. So this series of webinar has been organized by the Executive Committee of the Junior Members Working Group, which I belong to with my colleague Maria Torzowskaya, and also with 6 other junior members who are Sodeshna Borosekia, Gail Budgen, Kamia Danielski, Christopher Moore, Eleanor Sansom, and Temia Nanayakara, my co-host for today's webinar. So our working group has many goals, which are all focused on the issues faced by the early career researchers in the field of astronomy and astrophysics. And for that, we are working on many things, and you can find more details on our web pages on the IAU website. And among our projects, we are creating a community of early researchers, and you can join us on our Slack channel. You should have received a link last week by email, excuse me. And today, so we have the pleasure to welcome 2 senior researchers, and now over to my co-host Temia, member of the Executive Committee of the Junior Members Working Group.
Great, thanks Fatumana. So hi everyone, my name is Temia Nanayakara, and I'm a postdoc at Swinburne University in Melbourne. So it's my great pleasure today to welcome our distinguished speakers for our inaugural IAU Junior Member Online Discourse Series. We have the IAU President, Ewine van Dishoeck, Professor of Molecular Astrophysics of Leiden Observatory, and also the IAU General Secretary, Professor Teresa Lago of the University of Porto. So I will intentionally not give a long intro to our speakers because we will actually dig into the details of their respective careers during the second part of our webinar. So before we start off, if you have any questions, please do put it on the Q&A part of your webinar thing on the bottom, so we can actually look at the questions and then ask them during the on course this event. All right, so I think we can start now. So Ewine, so what is the IAU and what does it do?
Well, thank you very much, Temia. Thank you, Fatumata. Thank you, Maria, for organizing this and for inviting us to this first junior member webinar. I'm delighted to see the actions that the junior member working group is taking, because that was exactly what we were hoping when we started the junior member working group at the last General Assembly. Good, so let me actually go for 10 minutes through what the IAU does, and then Teresa will say a little bit more about the detailed working of the offices. All right, good. So we are the Worldwide Union of the Professional Astronomers. So the word professional means here PhD level and above. And the mission of the IAU is very simple: to promote and safeguard astronomy in all its aspects through international cooperation. So the international aspect is, of course, the key part here. And you also have national organizations for astronomy, but we are really the international, intercontinental, worldwide organization for astronomy. And these days that includes much more than just research. It's also communication, outreach, education, and development. So using astronomy as a tool for capacity building. We were founded exactly a century ago. We celebrated our 100 years last year, and some of you have actually participated in these festivities. By now we have some 14,000 members of more than 100 nationalities. We are organized in terms of divisions, commissions, and working groups. The divisions are top down, but the commissions and working groups are basically bottom up. It's really what the IAU membership wants to do in terms of its commissions and working group. We are striving for increasing diversity, including, of course, the junior members. I'll say a little bit more about it, but just to give you some numbers, in terms of women, we are still at the disappointingly low 18%, although growing, and especially among the younger generation of the IAU. How are we organized at the top? Well, we have the officers. Here you see the 4 of us for the triennium. So we always go from General Assembly to General Assembly. So this is from 2018 to 2021. And so president, president-elect, and general secretary and assistant general secretary. Then there is the executive committee, and the executive committee consists of the 4 officers plus then 6 vice presidents from across the world with different expertise. So here you see one example where we were in Mexico City. We get together once per year. And then we have the 9 division presidents, which are all often attending these meetings. So what do we do? Well, if you want to know more about the IAU, the best place to start is really at our strategic plan, which is posted prominently on the right-hand side of the IAU website. It was approved at the General Assembly, and as you see, it says 2020 to 2030, so we're just at the stage of starting the implementation of it. One of the functions of the IAU still continues to be to bring people together worldwide to advance astronomy. And we do that through our series of high-level IAU symposia, our regional meetings, and of course the General Assembly. And again, what we do here is that they always have a worldwide participation, and in fact we provide funding to enable people from developing countries to be able to attend these symposia, and also to enable young people to attend these symposia. We are organized into various divisions, and I think all of you as junior member have joined also at least one of these divisions. Several of them are from D through J are basically on the scientific topics, but then it's very interesting also, especially divisions B and C, which are on the facilities technology, crucial for our field, but then also education, outreach, and heritage, which are of course also equally important to our field. So you are welcome to join more than one division and be a part of that. Now we have other tasks and coordinations, just to name a few of them. Astronomical standards, that's an important part of Division A. The naming of astronomical objects and surface features, that's an important part of Division F. And then we have a number of working groups that we think are so important that they report directly to the executive committee. One of them is the dark and quiet sky protection, which is of course a very important topic these days. We just had a wonderful workshop about that for 5 days, highlighting all the issues that we're dealing with at the moment in terms of light pollution. Global coordination of large facilities, that's also an important working group that has just issued a very nice report on transient astronomy. And then we have working groups that really try to stimulate women and diversity. So we have a Women in Astronomy working group, we have the executive working group on the junior members, and then we have an executive working group on diversity and inclusiveness. And here you see already some of the actions that we're taking in terms of here, say the Inspiring Stars. This is the sign language that has come out of that working group. The symposium, that's the big symposium that we just had in Japan last year. All the actions that the women in astronomy are taking, such as here, Women in Astronomy lunches, the gender balance survey. And then we try to stimulate young people through prizes, and one of them is the IAU PhD prize, one in each of the divisions. Another prize for young people is the Gruber Fellowship for young astronomers, which is awarded annually, and it is up to $50 research funding. In fact, we just got very good news from the Gruber Foundation that we are able to raise the amount to 75 so that we can award an additional one each year. And so that has actually just happened for the 2020 case. But this is a wonderful way for young people to help boost their early career. And the next proposal deadline is in fact on March 31st in 2021. We stimulate women and girls in astronomy, for example, through activities that are launched every year around the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. So it's a little bit different in each country. Sometimes it's February, sometimes it's March or April. But for example, in 2019, as part of the 100-year celebrations, we had at least 300 activities in 67 countries. And we really would like to keep that momentum and repeat that over the years. We also invest in education, training and development. International School for Young Astronomers has been a very important part of stimulating development and diversity. This is really always in developing countries, 30 to 40 master students, early PhD students are trained for 3 weeks, and both through lectures and through hands-on activities. And that is been very successful. Many of them have gone on actually even to be lecturers now at these ECA schools. Hands-on training, big data is of course also important for careers. If you want to go not inside astronomy, but also outside astronomy, big data skills are important there. Education, we can use climate change on other planets as a wonderful example. On how climate change works. Venus is a very good example of that. So some of these activities are organized from the IAU, which is basically the knowledge advancement one that was founded in 1919. Some of them are through our Office of Young Astronomers, especially the ECA schools, which have been active already since 1967. And the Office of Young Astronomers is in Norway. Then we started the Office for Astronomy for Development in Cape Town in 2011, the Office for Astronomy Outreach and Communication, 2015 in Tokyo, and then just recently the Office of Astronomy Education in Heidelberg, which had its actually opening again just last week. And what this allows us to do, these offices, is have really worldwide networks that we can then roll out. This is just the example of the network of the Offices of Astronomy for Development. So this allows us to do things really on a worldwide and organize them on a worldwide scale. So I will stop here. I'm of course happy to take questions later on, but just hope to give you a taste also as to how you can get involved in some of these activities, how you joining some of the working groups and being active in any of the work that the offices are doing. But ultimately, with the IAU, we try to bring people together worldwide and use astronomy to make a better world. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Professor Ewine van Dishoeck, for your talk. So now we welcome Professor Teresa Lago, the General Secretary of the IAU.
Hello, I'm Teresa Lago, the General Secretary of the IAU. And after this fully presentation by Ewine, there is not much more to add. So I will continue where she stopped, and then I will return to a few points just to make a few extra comments. I will start by reminding you that the IAU is a non-profit scientific organization that is registered in France, and it's why we have our main office in Paris at the Institute of Astrophysics of Paris. When I mention main office, let's say headquarters, you may consider a very large office because, as Ewine mentioned, we have over 12,000 members, and we involve many countries in the IAU activities. But in fact, this small office is that is the house, the heart of the secretariat, and the secretariat is the focal point of the activities of the IAU. It's just an office under the General Secretary with 2 paid staff. You are invited to visit us at any time and to share coffee with us on the condition that you are not all in Paris at the same time, because you wouldn't fit in the office as it is very small. Besides, well, in this office, in this main office, we have 2 paid staff, because let me point out that most of the IAU work is done on a volunteer basis. You know, the president is volunteer, the general secretary is volunteer, all the members, division, committees, organizing committees of divisions, commissions, working groups are volunteers. So I really like to stress the point of welcoming you to also become volunteers in the many tasks and many activities that astronomy, that the IAU is taking on, and also the many other things that we would like to do if we have the manpower and, let's say, the power to do it, the resources, human resources to do it. So besides this office in Paris, we have a press office at ISO, also a volunteer. And then we have an IT team that we pay under contract to these, a very small IT team to support the data, your databases, and the handling of the web page. As it was mentioned, the main focus of IAU is on advancing knowledge and promoting research in astronomy. And I will reinforce again that the main activities are to stimulate the sharing of knowledge among professional astronomers, but through the organization of scientific meetings and also through the prizes that Ewine has already mentioned. I don't go in details because they were already referred, but let me move to another area that Ewine presented, but I wanted to go a little further in detail. And this is the many other activities that IAU supports because they are essential activities for the advancement of knowledge in astronomy. And I'm talking about the training, communication, education, and development that we entrust to office spread around the world. Training, it was referred that this is a partnership because all our offices are in partnership with organizations all around the world. So training is carried out through the Office of Young Astronomers that organizes 2 schools at the level of, let's say, masters and PhDs, first years of PhDs around the world in countries where there are astronomers, but not in a large enough number to have full, let's say, training of their own younger people. So we organized through Hoya, we organized 2 international schools of young astronomers per year. And Hoya is run also on a volunteer basis. The director, deputy director, and steering committees all work voluntarily. Then if we move to communication, this is done through the Office of Astronomy for Outreach, which is a partnership with the National Observatory in Japan, in Tokyo. And there we have a very small staff, paid staff, 2 people, and a very large network of the so-called national outreach coordinators in around 150 countries. But if you want to be involved with this, with the activities of this office, we also need a lot of volunteers for translation of documents to the various languages in the world, for communication, for initiatives in outreach, and enriching, in communicating the discoveries of astronomy and the knowledge of astronomy to a wider public of non-specialists. Then education, it was mentioned, this is the most recent baby, let's say, of IAU. Started activities in January this year. And this is a partnership with the Max Planck Foundation and Max Planck Society, sorry, for the promotion of science, and is set in Heidelberg And there we have, because we have sponsorship from several foundations to run this program, we have 6 staff, paid staff, and a lot of national education coordinators in many countries. Even if they started recently, there are already more than 250 coordinators involved. And the interesting thing about this office is that it will work in a different way, like a network, with the main office in Heidelberg, and then centers and nodes spread around the world, working together to promote the use of astronomy as a tool for education. Development, it's a joint venture with the South African National Research Foundation, and it's set in Cape Town, in OAD, the Office of Astronomy for Development. We also have a few staff members, 4 or 5 staff members, and then an immense network of volunteers and a smaller but very effective network of the regional offices of astronomy for development spread in the world. Of course, the activities of these offices are complementary. They work together, but as I mentioned, they have a very large group of volunteers, and they need your enthusiasm, your strength, and your knowledge to be able to go even further in their actions. I think I will stop here just to remind you that we have an IAU webpage where you have all the information about the structure of IAU, the activities of IAU, the divisions, the scientific divisions, scientific commissions, and of course the strategic plan that presents you the goals and the main objectives for the decade for the International Astronomical Union. And I stopped here. I'm sure you know this webpage. Anyway, go and look at it again.
Great, thank you. So we have some time for a few quick questions. Let me start off with you, Ewine. So you did mention a little bit about like the lack of diversity in some levels, especially very low level of women, like 18%, was it? So the question is like, what is the IAU doing to push for more equality and diversity in astronomy community and beyond?
Yes, so we do that at several levels. I mean, certainly at our symposia, we make sure that our organizing committees are, of course, already very diverse, usually roughly 50-50 in terms of gender balance. But then also among the speakers, of course, we make sure that there is a large diversity. Then we have to have a large diversity in the attendance. So basically, Teresa, or the Assistant General Secretary who is responsible for the symposia, would not give the approval for the IAU support. We give 20,000 euros support to every symposium. And that's primarily for making sure that we have this diversity in nationalities, diversity in gender, diversity in age groups, that is there. So he would not give his signature on that transfer unless the organizing committees do this. So that's of course at the scientific level very important. And then, as I said, I mean, through all of our offices, through all of our ECA schools, and then we have the recent first time ever an IAU symposium on equity, inclusion and diversity, and there is a springboard to action that is coming out of that, that's actually being prepared for release at this very moment. So you will see that coming shortly, where there are recommendations basically for inclusion.
Great, thank you. The next question is, I will ask it on Teresa. So as leading scientists would say, like we as a human, or the whole world is at a tipping point with climate playing a larger role for the future generations. So the question is, what is the IAU doing to push for more climate action in the astronomy community?
Well, I will reply, but I just wanted to add another point to the first question, or to the first reply, if I may. To be more inclusive, the IAU has very recently taken the decision to add an extra grant up to 15,000 extra euros to a country where, to the organization of a first symposium in a country. So when we have a proposal with the adequate scientific level and with the adequate gender balance, and if this is the first IAU symposium being organized in the country, they will have an extra stimulating, grant to, to make it more attractive to be organizers. And we already did that last year with a symposium in Ethiopia. But now going back to your question, well, actually, IAU has not been so much involved with the climate change problem itself. Of course, this is an issue for all of us, and astronomers are particularly sensitive to this problem, because we know so very well that Earth is unique, and if we want to be able to preserve the variability, the stability of the planet and the conditions for life to prosper here, we have to take measures. But it's not our main, let's say, area of knowledge. We have been discussing the possibility of setting up a working group. This discussion took place at the last ECA, last Executive Committee meeting, to set up a working group to discuss this problem, this matter, to make recommendations. But most probably, this will be replaced by a resolution to be presented for voting at the next General Assembly.
Thank you. So people can keep an eye for the next General Assembly then to see how IAU members can get involved in this process. Thank you. Fatimata?
So after getting a great insight of what does the IAU and how we can join it, so I welcome again our speakers to talk about what is it to have a career in astronomy. So please, Professor Ewine van Dishoeck, could you start?
All right, let me try and share my screen again. Okay, good. So thanks. In the second part, I would like to say a few words about my career, which is probably not typical of the general astronomy career, but then I think one of my messages is that probably no career is typical, because it always takes a different turn than you expect. Any case, if you want to read more about it, you see here already some elements. I'm an astrochemist, a molecular astrophysicist, looking at the formation of stars and planets. I think one of the tributes I want to make here is first to all the wonderful people that I've worked with throughout my career, both people in my own group and my colleagues that we've done projects with. And that makes also this career in astronomy so much fun. If you want to read more about it, there is an autobiography at the Kavli Prize website. In any case, let's start at the beginning. This is what my parents had in mind for me. You see clearly, they thought of me having a medical career and crawling here towards the university and going into being a doctor. Well, I did go to the university, but the really medicine, becoming a doctor was not my sort of my priorities. I discovered science actually while my father was on a sabbatical in San Diego, so I was sort of a teenager then. And that is actually when I went to a public high school in San Diego, and we had actually a teacher there who gave me my first science lesson. She was actually Afro-American teacher, which at that time was highly unusual still. But it was a wonderful way in which she basically inspired science in me. At that time, I was just doing Latin and Greek. The sort of the sentence that my parents gave me, "Via het jundo, she will gather her strengths en route," I think is very appropriate, again, for any career. It doesn't go that from one day to the next day you become, a major player. It is basically step by step by step. There are many steps, and you gather strengths as you go along. So I actually started out as a chemist because I had a good high school teacher. The importance of good teachers at high school, so important. That's why our education office is also so important. The high school teachers are incredibly important. But then I discovered at the university that I liked physics just as much. So I went into chemical physics, quantum chemistry. And then through a series of events, basically no professor being available to do my PhD in chemical physics, I actually moved to astrophysics, to astrochemistry during my PhD. And so that's one of the lessons that I want to give you, is that, first of all, make sure that you're good at something so that you get noticed. And then second, that you dare also to look sort of across the traditional boundaries, that you dare to look elsewhere and make an interdisciplinary jump. Certainly my master and PhD time was not all studying. Music, for example, is one aspect that was very important. And here you see us playing Hungarian and Romanian folk music. So from Leiden, where we did our PhD, we actually went on a postdoc to Harvard and Princeton, myself to Harvard, my husband, Tim Dishoeck, to Princeton. So we commuted for 3 years, which is something I cannot recommend to anybody. And then we moved to Princeton for a year. And then we actually went to Caltech, where I got my first faculty job, actually in cosmochemistry. So this was actually in the geology and planetary sciences division. So yet another part of interdisciplinary science there. But it was a very important part. And as I say here, one of the lessons that I learned in this period is to stretch those postdoc years, in the sense that they never come back. This is really the only period somewhere between, say, 3 and 5 years after your PhD that you are able to do sort of almost unlimited science. Also, moving around is very important to build your lifelong network across the world. But then after 6 years, we were able to come back to Leiden and get faculty positions there. So in general, what I've learned over my career is some lessons or in advice I would like to give to you. One thing is certainly that it's always better to excel in one area than to do lots of topics on an average basis. You need to get noticed. You need to be the expert in one area. You need to be passionate about what you do. That's also very important. It's important to take a pretty steep trajectory early in your career, because that will really help you in determining where you end up. But that means also seizing opportunities. And then I think something that many of us struggle with is to balance opportunities with your partner, which is always a give and take to stay together. And also to make sure that you have a vision of where you want to end up, and then work hard to make it happen. So the last 25 years in Leiden have been very rich in terms of science. Fortunate to have had many good PhD students, postdocs, several exciting missions in my field, infrared and millimeter astronomy, opening up with ISO, Spitzer, Herschel, and ALMA. I enjoy the teaching, administration a little bit less. But that goes sort of with the position. The farther you get along, and the more you also have to do of the administration. But I'm certainly fortunate to have been the scientific director of NOVA now for 13 years, the Netherlands Research School for Astronomy. That is sort of an important element in Dutch astronomy. Some of the big projects and challenges that I've encountered on my way, the Laboratory for Astrophysics, which was founded by Mayo Greenberg and which I took over in 1992, and which has been very successful, also as part of the understanding the data from the infrared mission. It's now under the leadership of Harold Linnert. Herschel, ALMA, JWST MIRI. And here the lesson is that it really takes sort of a commitment of at least 20 to 30 years in order to make these facilities happen. So it's not a short term. You really have to keep pushing. And I'm very fortunate that people before me had pushed for some of the missions that I was able to use. But this is really one of the things that's of the long-term commitments that we have to make as astronomers. The other one is, of course, IAU. I was fortunate that astrochemistry is one of these topics that really has been brought together worldwide through the IAU. And here you see some of our symposia, and we brought together astronomers, chemists, physicists, mathematicians, geologists. And I was fortunate to have been able to be its secretary and president of that working group nearly 20 years. Now we have grown to a quite large community with, at least at the major symposia, of over 500 people. So that's another lesson. I was just asked by the previous secretary, say, do you want to become the secretary? At first you say, oh no, I'm too busy with other things. But then I'm glad that I said yes, because you're able to shape something, you're able to contribute. So grab the opportunities when they arise, and that has now led also to my being now the president then of the International Astronomical Union, because I've seen its importance in my field in bringing it together. I would like to end with some advice that my supervisor, Professor Alexander Delgado of Harvard, has given. I think these are some very wise words. Motivation matters. Choose the right problems. Confidence matters, very important. Assume nothing is important. Skills matter. Use all the tools. Patience and tenacity matter. Never give up. Yes, you will encounter incredibly difficult situations, but hang on, can make it work. People matter. Human relationships are special, very important. And then, very important, integrity matters. Honest and the highest standards. Thank you very much. I want to just add to that, enjoy your work and enjoy especially also live. And you can be here on top of the world.
Thank you. So that was very relatable. So next we have Teresa. Maybe you can give a few words from being a professor of stars to being elected to the parliament in Portugal as well, how your career went around.
Okay. I must tell you that I've been enjoying my life and my career very deeply, and it has been very, very adventurous. I lived during my youth in Africa. And of course, if you live in Africa, it's unavoidable that you are wandered by the sky, the night sky. So I remember that I was very young, maybe 8 or 9 years old, and I would escape from home at night and lay on the grass just to watch the stars until I would be too tired and return to bed without my parents noticing it. So I moved to Portugal, to Porto, just to study at the University of Porto as a bachelor student in mathematics. And I did my BSc in mathematics. And then I carried on with another degree in surveying engineering. So really not a standard path for astrophysics, I would say. And then I got a contract at University of Porto as an assistant lecturer. But I was not so happy. Meanwhile, I had discovered astronomy as science during my studies. And I decided astronomy was really what I wanted to do. So I decided to take a master's degree and a PhD in astronomy in the UK. It was not that easy because by that time I had an husband and a child. And it's interesting that when I arrived at UK for my master's degree, my daughter was about to celebrate the first year. So it was a very full and exciting life. After the PhD, I returned to Porto because I had this contract with the university, and it was difficult. You know, astrophysics, research in astrophysics was inexistent in Portugal. There was no university where there will be research or even some research groups in astrophysics. And there was no funding for astronomy because there were no researchers in astronomy. So my lifeline were the collaborations with many colleagues from other countries that I had been in touch meanwhile during my master's and PhD. And of course, I kept on applying for observing time and getting observing time, both on ground telescopes, on space telescopes, but there was a problem. There was no money to perform the observations or to reduce the data. So I decided that I could do that in my own money and use my, let's say, holiday time to do that. Of course, I will return very frequently to UK, to France sometimes, to Spain, because that was close. And there was an ESA station where I could make the observations with the space with the telescopes on space, but also they allowed me to use the workstations to reduce the data during the time that they were free from the local stuff. Well, you have to keep in mind that at that time there was no personal computers. So that was the way to keep my career and to make my papers and to have my collaborations. But of course, you get lonely. I was teaching at university, but not astronomy. So I felt desperately the need for astronomy students, for people with an astronomy interest and with whom I could discuss, because at the time there were only 3 astronomers, 3 PhD astronomers in Portugal. Of course, this was in the 80s, some time ago, but it was not possible just to keep I didn't feel happy to keep it only my collaborations and preparing my papers. So I decided to do something else. And this was to start a negotiation between my own department, that was an applied maths department, and the physics department at the university, and negotiating, let's say, how can we set up astronomy, which for them was not a priority. 2 years after, 2 years of long, detailed negotiations, we were able to start an undergraduate degree with physics and mathematics and applied mathematics, but preparing for astronomy. We open, because in Portugal we work with numerus clausus for the entrance in university, we opened this course for accepting 20 undergraduate students, and we're delighted that we had more than 200 applications. And you can imagine the top 20 ranked in the ranking were, of course, excellent students. And so things began to become very interesting. But to lecture the students in other areas of astronomy and not different from my own, I had to invite colleagues from other institutions, mainly in Europe, to come to Porto and stay for a month to give an intense course on the other areas that we need to train the astronomers. And that was very interesting, very useful, because it was not just for the education, let's say for the training, but also because that started to build a very interesting network between our students that were excellent and this large number of people that would visit Porto so very often. A couple of years later, at the end of the 80s, I took a unique opportunity, and that was a meeting with our Minister of Science, and he proposed that I could prepare a plan to develop astronomy in Portugal. And of course I said immediately, yes, even if I knew I would have to sacrifice my sabbatical that was coming, and instead of going somewhere to do my own research, I spent most of this time with this Macintosh that you see at the back. That's why I keep it there, to prepare this plan. And this plan, because I had freedom to prepare it, this plan included grants for research projects, the starting up of a couple of centers for research in astrophysics in Portugal, and also negotiating with the ESO, the European Organization for Astronomy, for Portugal to become a member, and therefore not only to have access to the telescopes at ESO, but also and mainly to have like a reference for the developing of the research within the country. And we were lucky. At the same time, I was also able to guarantee a very large amount of money for grants to train at the PhD level our undergraduate students abroad in many countries. So this was very exciting because, you know, within, let's say, one decade, we started a new research center for astrophysics at university. Furthermore, this research center was able to have a new building following a negotiation between the university and the town hall and the Ministry of Science that allowed the Center for Astrophysics of the University of Porto to organize and to be responsible for the work of the town planetarium, which gave us a lot of visibility, a house, a very nice house and conditions to be in, but also like a guarantee that we had to carry on because this was an organization of public interest. Well, then many things happened, like starting an European master's degree in Porto involving other universities, with students coming to do the master's there and then going somewhere around in Europe to do the thesis, their thesis. Then later a very large network for PhDs involving 33 universities in Europe and sharing students and grants and organizing schools and, you know, very different things. But as I've been mentioned, I think you have to grab the opportunities when they appear, to be very critical about interest, even if they seem to deviate you from the path that you were following. And this way, I came to a couple of events that I will mention that were really very interesting, and I'm very proud of them. One of them was the setting up of the European Research Council. That was a group. I was one of the 20 people in Europe invited to think about and to set up and to prepare the rules of this European Research Council, which has been a very large success, not only in Europe, but worldwide, because of its inclusion approach in every sense, and mainly because of the principle that we have to trust the researchers And this was something that was not obvious for the European, let's say, community people working in Brussels. But more than that, and I think even with a larger impact, was our principle that we wanted to give the young researchers all the conditions that they could dream of to do their careers, the conditions we would like to have when we were young. And so we created special grants, very large grants, for the best young researchers that could propose an idea with the potential to have a large impact. And also this grant would allow them to be independent and to start their own future in terms of research. And this was really very successful. It was a different mindset, and I'm very proud to have been involved in this. The other thing is completely different, but I will finish with this. And it was, at some point I was requested, this was already 2000, year 2000, I was requested to be in charge of a very large international event taking place in my country, in my city, in Porto. And this was to be responsible for the preparation of Porto as the capital of culture of Europe in 2001. This was a very large challenge because it was not a science event. It was a cultural event with many sides and many faces, but I could include science in this event. And it was really a learning process. It was really a heavy and difficult school, but I learned a lot outside my normal environment. I learned to see university and the science from outside. And it was a lot of fun to deal with a very large team of people mainly addressing the very areas of culture, and also at the same time with engineers that were involved in building the new house for the concert, the new concert hall that is now an emblem of the town, and to change the public space into more and more interesting environment for people to use. I will stop here, but this was really fun. And essentially, I would tell you, if you have a dream, follow it. Even if the path is very difficult, looks very improbable. If you want it, you can make it. And since you are astronomers, you are by nature curious and adventurous. Don't ever lose your curiosity. That's the most important thing that you can do in favor of yourself. And I will say, keep in mind that it is very rewarding to meet new people, to work together, and to share adventures and collaborations. But most of all, really, and it's curious because I wrote my notes to tell you, and I'm ending the same way as Ewine. Most of all, enjoy what you do, and principally enjoy a fully and fantastic life.
Great, thank you. So it's kind of very inspiring careers for both of you. It's been great to hear that. We have a few minutes for questions, so I would appreciate if you can keep the answer short, then we can quickly try to see how many questions we can cover in the next 3 to 4 minutes. The first question is, given that we are in a different time period now with challenges regarding COVID, etc., what is one piece of advice you would give to your younger selves if you had to start your astronomy career again in the 2020s?
Well, I would still do the same, except that communication, I mean, you don't travel to other places, but there are ways of communicating as we are doing at this very moment. And so that is why also from the IAU side, we have been recommending to all of the commissions and working groups that please, you know, this is actually an opportunity to have more meetings, to give young people more of a platform to present their results than in the sort of quote normal world. So I mean, we're making the transition. We definitely need face-to-face meetings as well in due time, and I hope we can have them again in due time because those are also important. But going to this hybrid situation of mixed online and face-to-face, I think opens up more opportunities to be able to present yourself and your work to other that and to make connections with other people. And then you as the junior members can play a very important role in that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So Teresa, like have been getting a few questions on the chat. I'll ask one of them, which is kind of revolves around like how PhD students can get involved in the IAU, because I know IAU is more like a professional organization, so you need to have a PhD, but is there an opportunity for like students to also get involved in the IAU activities?
Certainly, there are plenty of opportunities. PhD students can be active volunteers with the activities of our offices. They can be our national coordinators, either for outreach or for education, and they can participate in and even, you know, start many activities that IAU would include in the programs of the various offices. So that certainly I would love to have as many as possible, since they are so passionate and so energetic.
So thanks a lot again to our speakers. So the IAU President, Professor Ewine van Dishoeck, and to the IAU General Secretary, Professor Teresa Lago. Thanks a lot. So we will try to answer to the questions that could not be answered by email, and please stay in touch with us. So thank you to you both again for taking the time to share your advices with us. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank to you, and I wish you all the best with your endeavors with this new webinar series, because I think that's exactly the way to go in this period. So very good. Keep up the good work.
Yeah. So.
Okay, thank you. So I also wanted to thank you for this initiative and for other initiatives that you are preparing for the GA next year. And any ideas that you have, please let us know, because we will support them as much as possible. Bye-bye.
Yeah, so I will definitely forward that on to all the junior members in the webinar at the moment. To like get in touch with us and give you ideas out, so we can actually try to form what we need to do. Quick update on the next event. We will be on the October 22nd at 8 o'clock UTC, where we'll have Professor Jocelyn Bell-Burnell from University of Oxford talking more on the careering through astrophysics. So we'll actually get a little bit more into detail about this thing. To an hour-long workshop. So please join us there, and you can find us on Twitter with more information and also on our website as well. So thank you very much for joining, and see you next